Platt, iOS developer. My coding level tech expertise is as good as it needs to be for me to do what I do. I'm not an expert in lots of things, but I've built something. I'm currently, it's called POSblox. It's not necessarily the most sexy product in the world, but it is my entire life at the moment. It's all consuming. And I thought instead of my wife glazing over, I'd talk to a room of other people to glaze over. So it's a tech startup. I'm in Cockermouth. I'm going to use we all the way through this presentation, but it is literally me and my schizophrenic self, I guess. But there's definitely nobody else here. And so forgive me for using we all the way through. The stage I'm at is product launch. I've got a pretty good minimum value product, viable product, and we're going to market, and we're raising funds at the moment as well. So the problem that we solve, point of sale, is generally these days, and has always been, aimed directly at retail. With the rise of mobile, that's widened the appeal of it a little bit to new market sectors, new user groups. The answer to that so far has been to produce a lack of niche market products. And they're really good and they're really powerful, a lot of them. But the problem is that their development costs mean that they're incredibly expensive. So I was talking to a guy the other day that's running his business on a £50 a week point of sale system in Keswick in January, where he makes not £50 a week. So what we've done is take the functionality of point of sale and broken it down into bite-sized modules, what we call blocks. We then rebuild those blocks up into fully functioning point of sale systems that ideally suit the end user's needs. This benefits the end user because instead of getting this linear product that means that they have to conform to what it does, they can build it the way they want and it can conform to what they want it to do and the way they want it to do it. The other great thing is that over time they can expand the product to new use cases, etc., as their business grows. It benefits me, as a company, because you've got bite-sized modules that you're updating and maintaining, so it's a lot easier to keep a grasp of where everything is in development. But most importantly, over time, we can expand the number of modules, etc., to encompass new use cases and new technologies as they come along. The starting blocks that the minimum viable product is made up of are roughly broken down into 6 categories. Those 6 categories take on each set stage of the process. So generate blocks are there to make a journey from zero to having a build created as efficient as possible. In a lot of cases that's banging a button and it creates a new build, but in some cases it's neat and tidy to be able to quote for a job and then turn that quote directly into a build, and the items on the quote can be then converted to live items, etc., or take a booking to manage your resources. The next step of the process would be to add items to that build. In a classic point of sale scenario, you press a button and that product or service lands upon the bill. We've built as much flexibility into that process as possible by allowing them to add it by price, by weight, length, height, time. You can modify each item once it gets onto the bill, you can add a description, etc., etc. So it becomes a really malleable database of products and services that works with the end user's use case perfectly. Build blocks are there to simply deliver an amount to a customer that they've got to pay, and so that could be as simple as receipt print and hand it over, or send an invoice by email or print it off, or more complex is build up an account over a period of time and fire them off a monthly statement. Payment, which is roughly where the nuts and bolts of the whole process comes down to, is a lot of point of sale sort of forces you into one choice, let's say. So obviously they can all record your cash and your cheque, and there's not much more you can do about that because that's physical elements. But beyond that, electronic payment of some description, whether it be a card payment or a online payment, can be done within the app. And so we've integrated with a company called Handpoint, and we can take we've got a card reader that you shove a card in the bottom of, and the the payment all takes place within the app, which means you've not got two separate systems running, which means reconciliation is better. That's handy. And then delivering a receipt, and last but certainly not least, data blocks, which mean that you can leverage the information that you've created as the system's been working. And if I fire them into very quickly a format, so add some booking, add food entry and item entry, print a pre-bill, take a payment, print a receipt, and then send the information off to Xero. Put that all together, and you get what is essentially a pretty powerful food service point of sale product. It looks like that. You can change the colour if you don't like the brownish, pooey colour. But it has all the hallmarks of a good food service app. Take that apart again and rebuild it by swapping a couple of things around. So take bookings out and stick quotes in, change bills for invoices, and send remittance advice at the end. And you put that together, and you're almost at the complete opposite end of the scale, where you're a plumber and you can work in exactly the way that you normally work, but it's all mobile, it's all in your pocket, and it's all point of sale. So you're not sort of sitting typing and building up invoices sort of on a weekly basis. So that's roughly the product. Does anybody have any questions on the product before I dive into some tech talk? No? Got a good idea of what I'm on about? So, we drew up some tech requirements, and the first one was that it had to be mobile. That's how I'm encompassing some new use cases, etc., etc. The second was that it had to be connected. There's not much point in it sitting on a device and not going anywhere, a ring fence around that. And so it needed to connect to other instances of itself, and it needed to connect to other services. And in a wonderfully online-offline scenario of a mobile technology, it needed to fail as gracefully as possible in the offline scenario. And it needed to be scalable. I currently have about £3 in my bank, and I can't afford to be running massive servers, etc., etc. So I needed to start off time-reading, no cost involved. But fingers crossed, we're going to need massive amounts of servers and usage, so therefore it needed to be able to scale into that use very quickly. I landed up plumping for iOS and native, mainly because that's what I did and do, and that's what I know. So it seemed like a good place to start. It is generally where a lot of people launch mobile technology anyway, because it's probably a more simple scenario than the Android offering, etc. Native, because I still don't think that anything else can keep up with it in terms of user experience, functionality, and certainly online, offline scenarios aren't quite as neat and tidy. And then, to mix things up a bit, I've stuck in a bit of a curveball, and instead of plumping for something like core data, which is all built into iOS, I wanted to build it on a data store that was flexible in terms of its operating system, so I could, at a later stage, it can port very easily, and B, helped me out a bit, because core data is like smacking your head against a brick wall. Obviously, you can sort of mix core data up with a bit of iCloud, and then you really just may as well just go on and do something else for a living. So, has anybody come across NoSQL or CouchDB before? NoSQL. Okay, so there is some of this stuff that I'm going to have to read, because I can't say it quite as well as Wikipedia can. So, forget about that just for a second. A NoSQL database provides a mechanism for storage and retrieval of data that is modelled in means other than tabular relations used in the relational databases. Motivations for this approach include simplicity of design, horizontal scaling, and finer control over availability. The structure differs of NoSQL databases, and therefore some operations in NoSQL are faster than relational, and in other circumstances relational kicks ass. I chose CouchDB, JSON for documents, which effectively means you stick a bunch of JSON in and store it, and it saves it as a little document, and it lands up being very much like a folder on your computer. You fill that folder up, and you then need some way of dragging them out. You use JavaScript for map-reduce queries, and then HTTP is the API. But the one thing that, this is lifted directly off the CouchDB website, and the one thing that they don't shout about, which is insane, because it's the most powerful feature of CouchDB, is replication. I'll talk about replication in a moment or two, but it's some good stuff. So, simply put, a document is literally a little bit of JSON. It has an ID and a revision number, and those two things help out with replication that we'll talk about in a minute. I'm not going to talk about MapReduce in any detail. Firstly, because my head tries to bobble off my shoulders if I try to talk about it. But secondly, it is quite a complicated thing. But effectively, it replaces the query that you get in SQL. And that function there, it's written in JavaScript, so some of you will recognise what's going on. That filters through all the documents in the database, pulls out the thing, all of the documents with the type of fruit, and then it sends us the whole document, because it's not very big and I will probably want all the information, and it orders it by the variable of item. I'm not going to go into it anymore. That's a map function. I've not put any reduce functions because I don't want to make anybody's head bobble. If you're interested in MapReduce, it is phenomenally powerful once you get into it. Particularly because it indexes once and then it has a change feed in the database. So first time round it can be a little bit chuggy and a bit slow. But once you've run it once, it goes really, really rapid and it pulls out information very, very quick. Which when you're delivering it for user interface purposes, then that really isn't hard help. And then the API is simple: put, push, get, delete. But I didn't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about that too much because there's lots of frameworks to help deal with CouchDB. Let me just quickly talk about replication, because this is really the focus of why the technology was chosen. There's two databases. I'm going to read again because I feel that the description here will be clearer than mine. So replication can be configured to be an incremental bidirectional process involving two databases. The aim of replication is to ensure that the last revision of all the documents is both in the source and the destination database. And by making this continuous, the replication can persist. So that happens, but by making it a continuous replication, it can persist over server restart, which means that there's no logic in resetting this up. There's no mind-bendingly repetitive code, etc. It just pull your phone out of the pocket and restart the app, and the server restarts and will find whatever servers it's replicated with in the past, making it absolutely ideal for online-offline world of mobile. My current situation is that I use a framework called Couchbase Lite. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but Couchbase is sort of derived from two of the main guys. One went one way, one went the other way. They're moving away from CouchDB in general because they've got their own product, which is much more production, much more powerful in lots of respects, but the open sourceness of CouchDB makes it much more versatile. Their framework, however, completely understands CouchDB and is really good because it's got a sort of one-to-one data modeling class, and it means that, again, user interface could run off that really, really neat and tidy. And then up in the cloud, I use a company called Cloud, who must be a little bit hungover today because they got bought by IBM yesterday, which I think has been their dream come true. I know the two main guys. I've spoken to them a bit, and they put CouchDB up in the cloud, and they offer a great service because I currently have 3 users, and all of them are paying me money, and none of them I don't have to pay them a penny. So it's all sort of £24 in my pocket. My current scenario is that I have one node, and it's got multiple devices connecting, and they can be online, offline, as much as possible. And as soon as you guys all go and download my wonderful app, then I'll get another, and the two things will replicate between each other, and it works fantastically because I can replicate out to as many nodes as I like, have my own big clusters if necessary, and most importantly, it's very geographically efficient. So where I've got a dense population of customers, i.e. probably Cumbria, I can have the nearest, select the nearest nodes to me to keep latency down to a minimum. And that whistle stop is my life in a shoebox right now. Has anybody got any questions? Oh no.
See the devices bit at the end where you have more nodes as you add devices?
Yeah.
Do those devices, do they get set up with particular nodes, or is it more just they ask for data?
They ask the data and it'll select the nearest node just by default. Yeah, it's all served up pretty geographic. They sort of really bump themselves up on the geographic side of things as well. Yeah.
How do you do your testing?
Sorry?
How do you do your testing?
Very nice people that are willing to put their businesses in my hands quite a lot of the time. I'm just about to do probably my first real install as of next week. A little shop in Keswick, but it's all got to start somewhere. He's very kindly said that, well, he's the guy that's paying 50 quid a month at the moment, and he's quite 50 quid a week, sorry, and he's quite happy to stop paying that and me give him something better for no money at all, practically. So yeah, it's out in the wild as much as possible. I've tried to adopt. If anybody's interested in startup, it is my entire life at the moment. It's what I know an awful lot about. I'm trying to adopt a lean startup approach. It's really interesting stuff going on at the moment in the world of startup because it's quite a popular thing to do. And there's a huge movement towards the lean model, and POSblox fits into the lean model phenomenally well. So if anybody's interested in starting up or funding in Cumbria or funding in general, then it's my life at the moment, and I'm quite happy to share what I've learned. So.
Is this only going to be developed in ISO?
For now, because I can't afford to pay an Android guy, and I definitely haven't got time to do it. But it'll be iOS first, and I'll land up at a web app eventually, but in my opinion, it's got to be mobile first, because then the user experience is built around the most common use case. Yeah.
You say you don't have a web app at the moment, so the printing and receipts and all that, how does that work?
All done straight from the device.
You plug in printers and...
Plug in printer to UI. I would have brought one, but I thought that it would be the same situation as with running my iPad and the laptop together. I didn't think the wireless here would let me communicate to them. But yeah, you literally plug it in. You have to do a little bit of discovery inside the app, but once that's done, it's all app based.
Can you do barcode scanning?
Yep, I can do anything you can do.
How many things have you said that like?
Never. But I'm going to use it more. Cool, thanks for listening. If anybody wants to talk to me about anything later on, then feel free.
Thank you.